Well, hello then, I do hope you're all well. Now, while I was watching this old Protocol and Ireland, Northern Ireland subcommittee meeting on the role of the CJEU, on the protocol itself, Baroness Goudie asked an interesting question. If I'm not mistaken, it seemed to me she was asking, does the government have legitimate concerns about the CJEU's role on the Northern Ireland Protocol to trigger Article 16? Well, that got me thinking when Liz Truss is probably made Prime Minister and barring a major miracle, I get the feeling she will be. Can she, and more to the point, would she trigger Article 16 over the CJEU just to get all knuckle-dragging mouth-frothers all going? And more to the point, even after that, what would be the EU's response be as well? Well, both three professors had some very interesting answers.
Morning. I've found it so far very fascinating. Thank you. Are the government's concerns regarding the jurisdiction of the CJEU on legitimate grounds for invoking Article 16? Or would the implications if Article 16 were invoked on these grounds? What are your views? Because there's a number of arguments. Anton first, please.
I think that's a good question. I think with both candidates doing their gaslighting and getting their base all frothing at the mouth over the European Court of EU CJEU, get the teeth in, and it should be interesting. It should be fascinating to hear these answers because I think it's a brilliant question considering with our Dizzy Lizzie.
Thank you for that question. I think it's a fascinating question, and I'm not sure there is one clear answer to it yet, but I'll try and do it. But so what Article 16 says is that there can be a safeguard applied on a temporary basis, effectively, if the application of the protocol leads to serious economic, societal, or environmental difficulties. Now, the question is, does the presence of the Court of Justice of the EU and associated difficulties, however you define them, fall under that scope of the text of Article 16? My intuition is that no, it doesn't, because what Article 16 is doing is its text is really about the provisions of the protocol leading to some on the ground difficulties that can be clearly evidenced. So, you know, if for example, the presence of the European Court of Justice led to some societal difficulties in Northern Ireland, and there was clear evidence of that would clearly provide grounds for invoking Article 16 on that basis. That said, there might be other circumstances on which to trigger Article 16. Trade diversion is another example of that. There might be, clearly disrupted supply of medicines, in my view, provides some grounds for thinking about triggering Article 16 and so on. But I don't think Article 12 of the protocol, which is really about jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice, provides that basis. We can speculate what the EU would do in the circumstances where the UK government would trigger Article 16, arguing that the Court of Justice is the main problem. What I imagine they would do is they would say that use of Article 16 is not legitimate, and they would try to challenge that before the arbitration panel that we talked about previously, and basically trigger a dispute about whether the invocation of Article 16 by the UK government was legitimate in the first place. So those are my main thoughts, but I know there is a whole range of views, and they will no doubt differ on that.
Thank you. Professor Barnard.
I thought that was really, really interesting. What do you guys think?
Yes, thank you. I broadly agree with that. I would just say that I think the purpose of Article 16 is to deal with an issue which is temporary, and that the purpose of Article 16 is to deal with that specific problem. It's short term, and it allows for a limited and indeed conditional deviation from the provisions of the protocol. The Article 16 is not there as a basis for rewriting the protocol as a whole. The very fact that Article 13.8 is in the text of the Northern Ireland Protocol envisages that there might be a different route, but Article 16 is to deal with problems, for example, problems over medicines getting onto the Northern Ireland market. It's not to deal with structural problems that you and Lord Dodds have referred to about the role of the Court of Justice or indeed the democracy deficit in the Northern Ireland Protocol. In answer to the questions of what could happen next if the UK does invoke it, in my view, in an incorrect way, i.e. to redraft the Northern Ireland Protocol, it's not invoking Article 16 for the purposes for which it's intended. If the UK were to invoke it for an inappropriate reason, then certainly at a minimum, the EU could start rebalancing mechanism, the rebalancing mechanism under Article 16.2. It could start the dispute resolution mechanism under Part 6. But also, and I think we've got some evidence that the EU has talked about this, there's a whole range of provisions in the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, which actually might pave the way for much more dramatic consequences, and it including, for example, either starting the process to terminate the whole treaty, which would take a year, or to suspend the operation of the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, which would take 9 months. Or the EU might engage in other safeguard approaches, including, for example, focusing on retaliation in respect of other aspects of the work. And so it is potentially quite serious if the UK invokes it inappropriately rather than for the purposes for which it was introduced.
I feel it's a very serious issue. Martin Howe, please.
Well, this should be interesting because this Martin Howe, I've heard him speak before. I get the feeling he was a bit of a Tory, and something stirring within me. He was a bit of a Brexiter. Now, I could be wrong, but that was the feeling I was getting. But he's not going to be a complete mouth-frother like Farage, but this should be interesting.
Muted. Yes, apologies for being on mute. Yes, I agree with Mr. Spizak's answer. I think that it's very hard to see how the issue of the Court of Justice's jurisdiction as such could give rise to an invocation of Article 16. Article 16, I think, would need to be invoked on other grounds, although one consequence of the invocation might well be that the safeguard measures that are adopted themselves wouldn't be, within the scope of ECJ jurisdiction, and thereby the jurisdiction of the court would be effectively extensively diminished if appropriate safeguard measures were adopted. I think I do have a little bit of difference of emphasis from Professor Barnard over the scope of what can be done under Article 16. I think it's important to note there are two grounds that Article 16 provides for taking safeguard measures. One, of course, is the serious economic, societal, or environmental difficulties which are liable to persist, which is the first ground. But the other one is diversion of trade. And it seems to me there is compelling evidence that the operation of the protocol is causing diversion of trade that was previously going, from Great Britain to Northern Ireland, and is either going from in the EU to Northern Ireland instead, or trade from Great Britain has to divert through the Republic, like Amazon warehouses have to be set up there because of the problems caused by the protocol. Now, although and these problems, in essence, it seems to me that safeguard measures can validly be taken under Article 16, so long as the problems persist. And if these are long-term problems, you can validly take safeguard measures under Article 16, which are long-term in nature. And that seems to me what the command paper was foreshadowing as a possibility, with this system of allowing goods to come in from Great Britain without needing to satisfy EU law formalities, provided they are to be consumed in Northern Ireland and won't cross the border. Now, Professor Arnold also mentioned retaliation. I think that it's important to note the word retaliation does not feature within Article 16. It does not authorize retaliatory measures. It authorizes rebalancing measures in consequence of safeguard measures, which themselves need to be proportionate. And I think some of the, there's a lot of bluff and bluster from the European Union about retaliation under the TCA or suspending the TCA. There's very little concrete behind it. It should be borne in mind that the TCA gives enormous advantages to the European Union in terms of allowing tariff-free access to the UK market of their enormous trade surplus in goods into the UK. And the idea that they would seriously disrupt that to considerable damage to their industries needs to be taken with caution, in my view.
Well, what do you think, guys? Very interesting, weren't they? They all seem to be saying that this great saviour, Article 16, for these extremist mouth frothers, I don't think it does what they think it does it? But I do love how Professor Barnard goes in depth, doesn't she? You get the feeling she really knows her onions, doesn't she? Well, you get the feeling all three of them do. But anyway, what do you guys think? Let me know below. Right, I shall leave the video here. And until the next time, I shall bid you farewell and take care.